Hopefully, by now, you've noticed a theme in this morning's speeches. You've seen our growth, we've shown you how we're achieving that growth, and we've told you how we intend to continue and build on that growth. So the next speech will very much follow on that theme. Our next speaker is here to tell you about community politics. But rather than just telling you about our strategy in the abstract, and some vague idea of what we could do, our next speaker will put this into real terms. And he's going to tell you about how he puts community politics into practice. He's a family man who puts hours of work into nationalism and into the party every week. But he's also a community councillor. And as a community councillor in Scotland, his work is non-political, and he puts time and effort into improving his community to make life better for his people where he lives. You won't see him crowing about it on social media, because much like many councillors, much of Dave's work is not about attracting attention online. Instead, it's about his community and the people who live there. Dave's record clearly shows that he is dedicated to his family, to his community, and to his homeland. So please welcome Councillor Dave Gardner.
Okay. Right. Good morning, ladies and gents. My name, as Daniel said, is Dave Gardner, and I have several roles within the Homeland Party. Firstly, I'm local contact for the northeast of Scotland, with a very small but very driven team of activists. Secondly, I head up the media team for the Homeland Party, which is a fantastic part of the Homeland Party. A group that's responsible for a lot of the stuff that you see here today, and a group that does a lot of work to put out all our content on social media and on our website. So just a big thank you to those guys for the work that they do behind the scenes. And finally, within the Homeland Party, I'm a proud member of the National Council. Outside of all this, though, I work a full-time job. And outside of that, I'm a full-time dad to two fire-haired and fire-hearted twins. That is a lot of nappies, walks, bedtimes, breakfasts, lunches, dinners, midnight wake-ups, tantrums, and half of that's just my wife. I also volunteer once a month to help out at my local country park, and I give up my Monday evenings to participate in a mental health charity meeting every week. But on top of all that, I am a community councillor for the Royal Borough of Forfar. But before we go any further, can I just get a quick show of hands in the room? Who here is involved in community politics in their local area? Now, it doesn't have to be just community and parish council. You can be scout leader, PTA member, local volunteer. Just a wee show of hands there. Okay, that's good. There's a few hands there, but we want everybody to be putting their hand up for this. We want everybody to be getting involved locally. So a lot of people say that they just don't have time to get involved, and I can understand that up to a point. But change, it doesn't come from doing nothing. We all should be doing something, even if it's just a small thing. If you're saying you don't have time, quite frankly, you're wrong. Because guess what? I don't have the time. I don't have the time. I'm a busy guy. You need to find a way to make the time. We're talking about the future of our nation here. In the end game of this, it's the future of our people. If that's not worth giving up a couple hours a week, what is? A lot of people in our wider circles, they'll play down the community or parish councillor roles. They see it as too beneath them, too small, not effective. They seem to think that community politics is meaningless, and the only way to get anything done is to look to elected MPs to solve everything. That's the route that everyone's been funneled down for a number of years now. And any time that they stand anyone for parliamentary elections, they lose. And it's not even close when the votes are counted. So if we want to change this nation for the better, then we have to change our approach. Because following the same failing formula year after year, it's not changing anything. It's just wasting a lot of time and money, and it's time and money that we don't have to waste at this point. We need a better way of doing things. People have sort of forgotten that community politics is literally the politics of everybody's daily lives. So potholes, wind farms, social housing standards, bin collections, gritting of the roads, flood defences, construction plans, council projects, common good funds, country park maintenance, local health provisions, schools. All of this affects everybody's everyday lives. It has an effect on their mental well-being, their happiness, their feelings of safety and security, and potentially even their self-worth. To quote from the legendary J.R.R. Tolkien, I find that it's the small, everyday deeds of ordinary folk that keep the darkness at bay. And it is, that's community politics. Taking community politics seriously can have a massively positive effect on everyone in our society, every day of the week, even when they're not fully aware of it. I'll give you a couple of small examples from my own experience of what can be achieved in a tiny little town in the northeast of Scotland. So in my town, we have had a lot of houses built in the last wee while, and it is far too many. We have seen housing schemes really add to the footprint of the local town, while local services and the infrastructure haven't seen any improvement whatsoever. It's standard play. Our roads have seen an increase in traffic, coupled with a complete lack of maintenance. It's almost impossible to get to see a doctor at certain of our GP surgeries. You have to battle with a receptionist at 3 seconds past 8 o'clock in the morning, otherwise there's no spaces left. And we're actually experiencing local flooding due to the constant building and concreting, giving rainwater nowhere to run but our town centre. So, as part of a plan to build more houses in the town, one of the local developers had been seeking to close off one of the bypass access points to the town. This was all in the name of safety, as our local council had said that this junction on the bypass would be subject to too much extra traffic should houses be built in a certain place in Forfar. So they turned down the initial plan and application. Now, the developer, rather than just accept this and look elsewhere for another site, they decided that the best bet was to put in plans to completely close off this junction and therefore eliminate the problem. So essentially, we've got a housing developer who stand to make a healthy profit and then just walk away from the town, looking to completely alter how Forfarians access their own town. They don't care how this would affect the town. They don't care about diverting a huge amount of traffic onto one already poorly maintained road into the town that goes past a school. They don't care about the increased time that it'll take the emergency services to reach the town and all the villages that lie out with the town. They don't care that the local farmers, it's a rural community that I live in, that the local farmers would then have to bring their farm equipment through the town to get it from field to field. No, all they care about is their money. They don't care about the people. And to a great extent, neither do the local council. They just see us as numbers to be managed, rather than human beings with needs, wants, and dreams. So understandably, the people of Forfar were not happy about this. My community council arranged a few evening sessions open to the public to give them the opportunity to share their opinions with us on this matter. The general feeling was, how dare a housing developer decide how we access our own town? So we collected the names and the signatures of a large number of people, and we added this to the community council objection to the plans. So this means that we could object on behalf of the people in the town and actually have evidence to show the mood of the general public. Now, would these plans be rejected by the council anyway, given the outcry of the town? Possibly, but you can't leave these things to chance in this day and age. Having the voice of the community council with a large number of public signatures behind it will definitely add weight to any decision that's made. Our local council, in an ideal world, would always have the default position of do not allow developers in without very good reason. But due to the horrific levels of red tape and nonsense in today's setup, this just is not the case. There are pressures on councils in Scotland, sent down by our wonderful SNP government, to build X number of houses every year. So the council will push for these things to happen wherever they think they can. And also in Scotland, our housing developments have to have a certain percentage of houses given over to social housing. And since our councils have managed their budgets so poorly over the decades and can't afford to build their own houses, they're seemingly very happy for developers to do this for them. So public resistance is a must. And organised, combined resistance is worth so much more than independent voices all shouting randomly. Now, don't get me wrong, there is a place for the latter, but more of the former helps a lot more. The second example I've got is of a much more practical nature. Through the community council, I learned that the local park ranger was looking to recruit some volunteers once a month to help out our local park. There's a huge amount of manual labour work needing done down there, and of course, there's no council funding for such things. Why would there be? So the rangers are looking for the public to come in and help. Unfortunately, the way these things are run, the rangers can't start a Facebook group and go out to the public. They need the public to come to them specifically. So people either stumble across this stuff or they don't. And I did, but purely because I'm on the community council, and I get a weekly update sent to me as to what's happening in the local area. So on a couple of occasions now, I've managed to pull in help from party members and even their families to add a bit of extra manpower to these volunteer days. A big problem we have at the minute is a sort of park-wide infestation of Himalayan balsam. It's a non-native, very invasive species that spreads like wildfire in our park, and it just chokes everything else out. It spreads very, very easily due to the conditions that it finds itself in here. And if it's not dealt with, it just literally covers everything, and it does cover everything. Removal of this nuisance is quite easy, but it's a very labour-intensive job because there's so much of it. A lot of the public are sort of full of apathy when they see what we're doing. They kind of see it as a lost cause and a task too large to even start, or they're often full of excuses as to why they can't help. But they're glad to see someone's doing it, just so long as they don't need to bother. And it all sounds a bit too familiar with politics around Britain these days. So in one session of balsam removal, I managed to get a team of 7, including myself. We are joined by 3 or 4 locals. So for one morning alone, I managed to provide a massive increase in the labour force. And therefore, we managed to get a lot of extra work done. And this all benefits the nature around the park and the lives of the people who then go and use the park. And it shows the locals what things can be achieved with just a bit of grit and determination and, a good sweat. But I'd have been hard pushed to know about this without being given the nudge from being in the community council. It's essential work, and it does need done to maintain the environment where I live. And luckily, I know a lot of people who have a similar mindset, like that similar can-do attitude. And I can mobilise some of these people to come out and help. It's actually a lot easier than you think, this community politics lark. You just have to be willing to get stuck in, lend a hand, and give a bit of your time. The more people that get involved, the more you can achieve. The more you can achieve, the better things become. It's easy. I mentioned earlier, we also have a flooding problem in the town. Now, this is due in part to the fact that the loch next to Forfar was drained in the late 1700s. Most of the town stands on land that was once under water. But it's also due in part to the fact that we keep building houses everywhere, and the amount of concrete and tarmac that's everywhere. The rainwater has nowhere to go, it doesn't drain away naturally, and it just flows in the middle of the town. So a couple of members of the community council met with the local council to set up a resilience plan with local businesses and houses in the event of more floods. The result of this was a much more coordinated way of distributing sandbags, simple things like sandbags. And we used social media. People got in touch, told us what they needed. We told them where to go and get the sandbags. And we can actually deploy these things out when we knew the bad weather was coming. As a result of these plans as well, the council found a culvert that hadn't been cleared in 20-odd years up on one of the hills. Got that cleared. The next time we had heavy rains, the flooding was a lot less. So this small amount of work has made the council just have a look at other possible options. And it's worked. This is people's lives made better with very basic community politics. Something else about being involved in local politics, especially in our area, is being in place before something bad happens in your community. If we take something like migrant hotels, for example, aside from your foaming at the mouth lefties, nobody actually wants this in their town or their nation. We don't want fighting-aged male migrants all housed together in our towns. We don't want the risks. We certainly don't want the costs. But our government and our councils don't really seem to care. So organised resistance is very important. The problem with being reactive, though, is that you're less effective as you have to wait for something to happen before you can then act. If you're proactive, if you're already involved locally, you might catch wind of something before the wheels turn just a wee bit too far. You can organise opposition effectively. You can take it directly to your local councillors because you're already in place. And that's the key point. Because we've seen numerous groups form in opposition to these things, like the migrant hotels, but the narrative is always skewed to avoid talking about demographics and migrant crime and costs. And once these groups are established by people who don't really oppose immigration, it's very easy for them to peter out or be misdirected, while conversely, it becomes harder to restart the conversation and direct it accurately. But if you're already involved, you can be the one leading the people in opposition. You can direct the narrative. You can let people know that their concerns are valid. If you're already in the fold, if you can organise first, you can be the local leader and press the real issue home rather than let it be hijacked by a group of people who are always working against us. And this isn't limited to migrant hotels. I mean, this can be anything. If there's, drag queen story hour being pushed in your schools, or a problem we've got in Scotland is the safe consumption rooms being planned in our area, or pride parades going through your town, you can be the one who stands up and makes the public's concerns known and makes sure they're not diverted into non-issues and dead ends. But you can only do this effectively and efficiently by being involved before the bad things happen. You have to be there working away for your people. And this is all it takes to be a community councillor. Giving up a bit of your time for others, taking an interest in your community, and just working to make it better. If you don't do this, if you don't make the small changes in life, then how, in the name of hell, are you thinking you can tackle the bigger problems that face our people in this country? If it's too much hassle to turn up at a meeting for a couple of hours a month, how on earth are we going to fix the NHS? How are we going to solve the immigration problem? How are we going to put meaning back into the lives of our countrymen and women? All this stuff is going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort, but it has to start somewhere. And the general public will have zero faith in your ability to do any of this if you can't even show a bit of willing, do some local community work. They need to know who you are. They need to see what you've done. Words are just not enough in the digital age. Everyone can talk a good game about what they will do, but it's your actions that define you as a person. And currently, we have a population in this nation that is wholly apathetic towards politics and politicians. They don't believe a word of it from these people, with very good reason, and neither do we. If we're serious about all of this, if we really want to heal our people, our communities, and indeed the soul of this nation, then we have to do it by starting at the bottom and building upwards. Only then can we have a groundswell of support. Only then can we have the unbreakable backing of our people behind us. And only after we've built an opposition with strong foundations, where the general public can see that Homeland Party members have their best interest in mind, only then will people put an X in the box and let us do what needs to be done for this country. There's no shortcuts. There's no fixing this with a couple of token MPs. Look at reform. There's millions of people voted for these MPs, but nothing is going to change. Because change can only happen with all the other parts of the puzzle filled in. And reform, whether deliberately or not, they don't have all the puzzle pieces in place. They'll be completely ineffective at local level. And this is exactly what the powers that be want for anyone who's designated right-wing. They want an individualized, isolated population, demoralized and downtrodden, with seemingly no way to change things. They want a world of unreachable MPs who are too busy to get involved in local matters. It's not going to be enough for us to have Kenny Smith MP and literally nothing else. No matter how passionate or hardworking he is, it's going to take all of us to succeed. But we can succeed. And this is why we are doing what we're doing in the Homeland Party, because we are playing for keeps here. We will build up our people and we will build up our communities. We will destroy the isolation and the demoralization that has been foisted upon us. We will raise our people up and we will work to make their lives better than any government has ever bothered to do. We are the last best hope for our people our culture, and our nation. And this is why I'm urging all of you to be a part of this. And it starts and ends with community politics. Thank you very much.